Good afternoon, everyone. We are happy that you are here with us today. And I would like to start my speech that the panel we will hold will create more alternative solutions to women's problem, and I greet you all. Since 2013, as KADEM, we have been following the United Nations CSW events, and since 2015, we have been organizing our parallel events under NGO CSW Forum. This platform is the only place that brings women from 193 countries together with agendas related to women. It also makes it possible to bring official authorities together with civil society to look at women's issues from different perspectives. For this reason, it's very valuable for us to be at the United Nations and organize our events here. I am here today on behalf of our chairwoman, Associate Professor Saliha Okur-Gümrükçoğlu. She was planning to attend this session and make a keynote speech, but unfortunately she couldn't come to New York because of her recent illness issues. And she sent you many greetings and love. Also, as many of you know, our country experienced a huge earthquake disaster on February 6th, and more than 46,000 people lost their lives in 2 consecutive earthquakes, and they affected 10 Turkish cities. Thousands of people were injured and left homeless. And I commemorate those who lost their lives with mercy and invite you to a minute of silence. Please. Thank you. As KADEM, with governmental cooperation, we initially started an aid campaign immediately after the earthquake. Through our representative offices in the earthquake region, we identified the needs there and delivered the aid quickly. We then visited the area. In particular, we talked to the female victims of the earthquake and we coordinated our aid according to their needs. And we opened 3 women's support centers in the region that affected by the earthquake, and most of our colleagues are still volunteering in the region today. At the centers, we support the women's psychologies and physical needs as well. Our work for women in the region continues, and we believe that together we will overcome these difficult days. Without a doubt, women are the most affected groups in times of crisis such as war, pandemic, and earthquake. During these periods, women suffer social, economic, and psychological damages. And unfortunately, women all over the world are struggling with many more problems: violence, oppression, discrimination, inequality of opportunity are some of the universal women's problems. We want all women of the world to live with honor and dignity, without abstaining from or fearing anyone. We carry out big projects, activities, training courses, and awareness-raising works for this purpose. We organize campaigns against violence by addressing it from perspectives on November 25, the day for the elimination of violence against women. And in every individual campaign, we cover different types and dimensions of violence. The theme of our 2022 campaign was stalking. Because we have seen that women don't have sufficient information about this topic, and a victim of stalking does not exactly know what to do and how to protect herself and her rights. Through the public service announcements and social media contents, we emphasize that stalking is rights violation and form of violence. We advertise with our campaign that stalking is crime, according to Turkish Criminal Code number 5237. As KADEM, we prepared a 45-second PSA clip with the slogan, "Hold on to the law, it protects you." in cooperation with the Ministry of Family and Social Services of Turkey. Now, let's watch the PSA clip together. Now.
Israrlı takip bir şiddet türüdür ve 5237 sayılı Türk Ceza Kanunu'na göre suçtur. Yazıya tutun.
In this film, we express the feelings and emotions of women. We reminded the victims that the law stands by them when they are stalked. As KADEM, we aim to combat any kind of problems that women face in their lives. Since the establishment at a very special day on March 8, 2013, KADEM engaged in advocacy in order to deliver the human dignity women deserve. Also, KADEM has a mission of carrying out solution-oriented best practices to solve the issues and combat barriers that inhibit women's most basic rights. We have both academical and implementational activities for advocating the women's rights and empowering them through trainings and projects. As KADEM, we prioritize women's safety, peace, and well-being. We have various activities and works for women's rights advocacy. For example, this year, we organized the 7th Women in Innovation project, which we support women entrepreneurs. With the entrepreneurship camps and demo days, we supported more than 200 women on their way to become small enterprises. And today, most of them established their companies and working with innovative solutions to the environmental problems as the United Nations team for this year for CSW. With different projects we implement and through our advisory boards, we work for women in arts, women in rural, women in academics, women on the move, women in business and education. At the beginning of this year, we opened our Women's Support Center in Istanbul, as well as we opened in Earthquake Place. We wish to support young women who aspire to change their circumstances and contribute to their own well-being through our center. We first listen to problems of women visiting the center. We try to learn and understand why she reached us and what her expectations are and how can we support her. We determine her needs and provide the required support through our specialists. To contribute to the literature on women with our unique discourse, we also published the semi-annual peer-reviewed Journal of Women's Studies. And we organized academic congresses, educational activities, and awareness campaigns as well. Moreover, we organize the International Women and Justice Summit every 2 years. At the summit, we examine the issues that concern women, families, and society on a global scale. Together with government officials, academics, researchers, press, activists, and students from a variety of countries, we address women issues with a multifaceted approach. Of course, our activities are not limited to Turkey. We communicate and share our discourse with the whole world by participating in international events and platforms. KADEM has been one of the 3 associations of the Executive Committee of W20 Summit, which was initiated for the first time within the G20 under the term presidency of Turkey. We have participated in the W20 Summit every year since 2015 and thus contributed to the communique and work in the field. Also, here at the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women, we organize parallel events with different contents every year. We hold panels, conferences, events to share women's issues with the whole world, and we also come together with Turkish institutions and organizations in the US. KADEM is a large family. We have a giant army of volunteers supporting us across the Turkey, and there are women who believe in us and whose lives we touch. This gives us strength, And we want to share our strength with the women of the world and continue our struggle on a global scale. Thank you all for listening. And now we move to our panel program. We will listen to talks about the legal aspects of stalking, training and education as preventive factors, and some good practices from Turkey in the fight against stalking. And I would like to invite our speakers and the moderator now. Dr. Nursem Keskin Aksay, Attorney Adam Massey, dear Sana Qutubuddin and Onur Dinçer. The floor is yours. Thank you again.
It's working or not? Okay, can you hear me? Okay, it should be working now. Welcome everyone, dear guests, dear colleagues and dear friends. As we already mentioned about the earthquake, we are also very in very, very devastating moments in Turkey. We were also thinking that should we doing this panel or not, but then we understood that, especially in crisis and in other kind of conditions, women are much more vulnerable than ever. And gender-responsive kind of discussions in every realm should be done and should be worked on. That's why we are here for a special kind of topic here, but we can discuss in every level of the gender-responsive things. That's why we are talking about digital harassment and stalking today. Because this has been beginning a kind of big issue in the world, around the world, in United States, Germany, Japan, and in all over the world, we are seeing so many rising kind of percentages about stalking. And as we know, this digitalization discussion is a very new discussion and not taken very seriously because it is also seen as a kind of soft kind of kind of effect to women. Why we are saying always women? Because we know and we have some academic and civil society-based kind of data that it is much more affecting the women and they are getting more vulnerable on it. That's why we are trying to today talk about stalking, and we want to also underline that this is a kind of, let's say, following actions kind of issue that we have to take. This is always taking a kind of step to physical violence most of the time. We have so many cases in Turkey that, like, after some kind of 6 months of stalking by physical following in social media and then in certain kind of digital areas, like some murders are happening as well. This means that this stalking itself shows certain violence intentions as well, and we have to take certain legal kind of attempts. In relation to this, Turkey also accepted this legal code last year. We are trying to, of course, this is very important, and so many countries are also taking this, but we are also trying to be very sure that the applications and the awareness of the women should be increased about this issue. Because otherwise the panel code is not sufficient enough in itself. That's why our panelists today, very, very valuable panelists today, will be talking about these issues. And actually, we have different kind of panelists. We will cover so many aspects of the issue. And I will begin with Adam Massey, actually. Adam will be talking about legal approaches to digital violence and stalking. And he is an attorney, actually, and partner at the C.A. Goldberg PLLC. And he is working there for the last 8 years. He has been graduated from Cardozo School of Law, and he is a Paulson Scholar there. But this is the most important thing is he has so many experiences in this area that extensive experience of working with victims of complex stalking, harassment, privacy violations, And he has been working on so many cases about this issue, especially in USA. That's why we will take some legal kind of discussion and the cases examples from him. This is your turn, Adam. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Hi, can you hear me? No.
I think you have to. Oh, sorry. It's okay.
Where's the on?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Wait. Yeah. Hi. I'm Adam Massey. I am a partner at the law firm of C.A. Goldberg. Closer? Can you hear me? I have been working for about 8 years on cases of severe stalking. And I think that it is important to acknowledge that the perception of stalking is sometimes that it's not the most severe crime, right? It's not a physical assault necessarily, it's not a sexual assault. But at the extreme end, it can be equally devastating to the victims. And so that's, I think, what I'm going to talk about today, which is what it really means to be a victim of stalking and why it's worth having a robust legal response. So at our firm, I've worked with dozens, maybe hundreds of victims of complex stalking. And the way I'm defining complex stalking is something more than a series of phone calls or a series of emails that cause irritation or alarm. The cases that we work on that get people to reach out to us are ones in which they're dealing with a full spectrum attack, right? The advent of smartphones has made stalking, digital stalking, a vastly more complicated problem because none of us can really function without our phones and without our apps and without our email. And that means stalkers can now turn your phone effectively into a traumatizing device, right? They can make it so that a victim has to fear every notification that comes in their phone, because whether it is their perpetrator or a third party that has been sicked on them by their perpetrator, you have to worry about every single notification. So I can give some examples. We've worked on cases with the Department of Justice because we do have a federal cyber stalking law under which, in certain very serious circumstances, people can go to federal prison for the conduct. What it normally requires to get the federal government involved are death threats, which are often a part of stalking. But what a more typical fact pattern will look like is someone will have a grudge, right? I'm thinking of a family I worked with, older people. Their son had caused offense to someone. The parents had no idea who or what it was. I was reviewing my files for this case, and I had about 800 emails from these clients, just of them forwarding me evidence. So what that looked like was from a period of October to January, they were getting different touches by an individual who was trying to harm them. They were being told that they were pedophiles. They were being told that they were going to go to prison, that they were going to be exposed for their crimes. These people had not committed any crimes. But beyond that, they reached out to their family. They reached out to their employer. They reached out to every board or nonprofit that these people were involved with, making the same ridiculous claims. From there, what it looked like was getting phone calls with a voice-changing technology saying, "We're outside your home," or "We're outside your son's home," and with pictures so that they knew it was real. And when you hear about stalking, perhaps you think someone's following me around, right? Which is, someone's following my movements. What it looks like now is something more insidious in which it's just this constant poking from all angles with threats that are designed to cause real emotional distress. Another case that our firm was involved with was called the United States versus Juan Thompson. And in that case, this reporter named Juan Thompson had been a fabulist. We didn't know that at the time. He had made up many lies in print. Our client was his live-in girlfriend who was being harassed by a random individual. It emerged later that the person who was making our client's life a living hell was the man who was sleeping next to her under a fictitious personality. From there, when he was exposed for that, the conduct took on levels of severity that we don't see very often. This man mobilized entire internet communities against this woman. So she was being told by some people that she was anti-Semitic, by some people that she was racist, by other people that she was a neo-Nazi, simply because this man was spreading the rumor in an intelligent way and sicking internet communities on her. That alone maybe isn't so bad, but what he did then was he began to send out death threats in her name. So the police were told, Jane Doe is at her workplace with a gun, and she's going to shoot everyone. So the police showed up with their guns ready to shoot her. It wasn't true, of course, and that was de-escalated. Matters came to a head because the man began to call in bomb threats to community centers in her name, which ultimately resulted in the Justice Department acting quickly, and he was sentenced to several years in prison. But what I can say about that is that man was allowed out of prison after serving his time quite recently and immediately began stalking this woman again. He began to send threatening messages via Twitter. He began to impersonate people. He began to contact the people in her life again. And for that, he was resentenced for a probation violation. But the outcome I'm describing is vanishingly rare, because the people who are best equipped to investigate these crimes are the federal government. And they simply do not have the resources to do it very often. So that may raise the question, what can victims do? What can victims do on a day-to-day basis? What are the strategies? Oftentimes, victims are not going to be believed when they say they're being stalked, right? Whether it's law enforcement or people in their life, there's often denial. The police in New York City, for example, will tell victims it's not that big a deal, handle it yourself. The key first step is letting victims know they have to systematically record evidence, right? Victims need to know this is a crime that is involved with disempowering women, right? And other minorities and other marginalized groups. They need to be told that they have to systemically record everything in order to convince law enforcement that it's real, right? So that means screenshots. It means creating time logs. If you're getting called 80 times a day, which we have seen many times, you need to be able to show someone that that really happened, which you can do with screenshots and with getting your own phone records. So unfortunately, the burden does shift to the victim to prove that it's real, to prove that it's not an anonymous person that can never be found. Because quite often the stalker is someone who has at least a tangential connection to a person. I think, in terms of what our firm does, right, we do have other legal tools that we can utilize, and so do other firms and so do law enforcement. But really what you have to do with victims is help them come up with a safety plan, which is easier said than done, but that involves recognizing that what a victim is going through is quite real and is often a form of domestic violence, which means people need to be provided with options and provided with alternatives to the way their lives have been running. They also need places to go if the conduct becomes too dangerous, because almost inevitably this conduct culminates in, I'm standing outside your house to kill you, or other bad conduct. The other really key step is, it's possible to sue in most jurisdictions. It would likely be kind of characterized as an invasion of privacy or emotional distress claim. Whether that's going to get the victim what they need in terms of the short-term relief is a very valid question. But in many states, not New York, they've developed stalking orders of protection, right? Which means that victims can go to the courts and say, with a showing of, normally a fairly minimal showing, that this is happening, that the conduct is real, and that they need an order from the court, which would result in an arrest if the violator continues. It's an imperfect tool, but it is one of the tools victims have to use. Another component is gonna just be advocacy, right? So advocacy with the platforms who have the ability, oh, can't hear me? Advocacy with the platforms who have the ability. Oh no, I've just been talking to myself this whole time, huh?
Start over.
You two heard me, okay, good. All right, well, to summarize after all of that, I wish...
She's not trying to rush you, she was just joking.
Yeah.
Oh, good joke. Okay, so the stalking needs advocacy, right? It needs civil society groups and NGOs to continue to pressure law enforcement and to continue to pressure the tech companies, because the big tech companies are key to all of this. They have the exclusive access to a lot of this information. They will know who the real offenders are better than almost anyone else. So that means encouraging them to cooperate with law enforcement. If a victim can get law enforcement interested, the next question is, can law enforcement get a tech company to cooperate, right? I was speaking to a foreign government yesterday who were dealing with problems with the big companies who will refuse to comply with their subpoenas because the servers are in the United States. So this is a kind of worldwide problem in which law enforcement of all kind need to recognize and work together to kind of finish up this problem. I guess I only have 2 minutes left. So the takeaway I would want everyone to have from this is that stalking really, in its modern 2023 form, is not what we understood it to be historically. It is a diffuse system, often involving multiple actors, often involving multiple technological systems, where the key step is kind of understanding what's happening, coming up with a support network that will allow you to get through it, and seeking legal protection, often through law enforcement. And that's all I have. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much, Adam. Okay, can you hear me? Okay. Thank you very much, Adam. I mean, this was so quick, but we have so many questions for you, maybe. You will go on with this kind of very important discussion. And I mean, I want to underline the complex stalking concept that Adam is using, because as I try to introduce, this is related to other kind of violences. And that's why it is not just a kind of a specific violence, but it is related with all other kind of violences in a very complex way. That's why it should be focused in a special way as well. And these cases were very good examples to understand this complexity. Thank you very much for this, actually. And we can just continue with Sana, maybe. This will be a good input for how we can get certain education and awareness about it. She will be talking education and awareness activities in the fight against digital violence and stalking. Sana Qutubuddin is the executive director and founder of No Separate Justice, a US-based civil society group. And also, she is also a founder of Women Create, a women's group that advocates the healthcare, social welfare policy, and greater protection of women's personal and psychological space. She also served previously as the Dean of Konulu Leadership Academy and taught political science at Mary's College. And now she is the president of American Federation of Muslim of Indian origin, actually. This is your turn, Sana. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be with all of you today. It's remarkable. We were just talking before the panel. In 2016, we were on. I was a part of this social justice panel at the United Nations, and we were talking about. I brought up the issue of digital human rights, and I remember this man that was also part of the UN team there scuffled and kind of laughed at me when I was talking about digital human rights. And I think it's incredible that all of us are here today to address this universal violence that's impacting so many women around the world. women in our communities, and it is so extremely pervasive that for a lot of women, there's no opportunity to even figure out how to address it. The fact that it's happening, many women are aware of their phones being hacked, their computers being hacked, the cameras on their phones and their computers being hacked, being seen in their most intimate moments, and not having any power to have any control over those situations. So it's a very difficult battle, and I think this is the wonderful thing about all of us being here today, is that that first step begins with awareness, and awareness as to how insidious this violence is and how many people are impacted by it. In our group, Women Create, there are 3 journalists that had their pictures put online, their photographs put online with pornographic images, bodies that weren't theirs, that could, they made it seem like they could have been their bodies. And these were brilliant journalists. And unfortunately, due to this, a lot of them have the 3 of them, they've kind of really diminished their own professional careers as this has happened, for the reputational harm that's also caused their families. And so when we talk about how this digital harassment and surveillance is impacting the lives of women in real time, it is really just stunting people. It's killing people while they're still alive. One of the women that I spoke with was talking about how she feels paralyzed, constantly paralyzed, because there's nowhere she can go or escape where she's not being surveilled. And that has so many consequences to it. It's like somebody is going through all of this pain and suffering, but they don't have the physical, the marks on their bodies from the physical abuse, but this psychological abuse is so intense that it's as though people feel that they're caged. And again, the prevalence of it is something that it is astonishing. And of course, as we're becoming more and more aware of this type of violence, one of the most critical things that all of us can do is to not dismiss somebody's concern about what they're experiencing, and tell them that they're not crazy. So the first thing that happens with most women who are experiencing this violence is that they first dismiss themselves, unfortunately, because they don't think anyone is going to believe them, as Adam had mentioned. So they muzzle their own voice before they can even tell anybody else. So there's that hurdle there, is not to muzzle our own voices. And then the communities that we tell and we share these issues with, our communities have to be strong enough to say, let's hear you out, we're with you. So when a woman is able to get past that first point of, okay, identifying this is happening to me, I need to be able to share this with somebody, the community members then need to be supportive and trying to find a way forward. Again, the paralysis of psychological, intellectual, social, spiritual life that a person begins to experience because of this violence is something that is cause for a lot of concern. And I think one of the issues about educating our communities about this is really targeting that education also to the demographics of men who are carrying out this violence. And I'm grateful that this talk is happening at CSW, because this is a type of violence that is directed towards women by men overwhelmingly. And the education of how do we dismantle such a massive monster that, you know, is seemingly invisible at times and not invisible. One of the women that had her phone and her computer hacked, you know, had this guy that she knew, had not even dated, messaging her that, you know, he could see her and everything, and then he could delete the messages on her own phone and her computer because he had hacked into her Google account. So one of the main things that was mentioned was that really documenting all of the evidence as it's unfolding, all of the screenshots, and to do that meticulously, and that's really great information because people feel so disempowered in these situations. They don't know whether to trust their own minds. But again, it's happening so often. It's astounding. So directing the education of this type of violence and the type of psychological detriment that that causes to women must be targeted towards men. And we find in education that the greatest education takes place when there's peer-to-peer education. So when you have peers educating each other about a certain issue, their peers are most likely to really, that information is really going to sink in, and it's going to impact them in a different way versus it coming from some other source. And when you think about peer-to-peer education, how do you do something like that with a campaign about digital violence on a large scale? We have social and cultural icons, athletic icons, who are within the peer groups of demographics of men who commit this violence. And so a winning strategy has been in other sorts of awareness campaigns targeting young men is to find the cultural icons and athletes who are willing to support these campaigns and to go public with talking about the harms of digital violence and the harms of digital harassment. So when they're talking to their peer groups and other young men that really pay attention to what they have to say, that message resonates. I think that the messaging and how that's done is really critical because there are different layers to educating ourselves and our communities and the groups of people who are committing this violence. So there's the piece that has to do with peer-to-peer education and cultural icons addressing people who are somewhat within their demographic on a large-scale campaign. And then there is the work within our communities to, for women to have cybersecurity training. And that's something that we've done with our women in our organization. We've done cybersecurity training with a group called Equality Labs, and social media training. Awareness of what tools you can use within a social media platform to report certain incidences and all of that. And at the same time, when I talk about social media training, I want to be sure to mention that we need to hold these social media conglomerates and entities and corporations accountable for their role in perpetuating violence, violence against women, and then large-scale genocides that social media companies have so much influence and impact in those realms. Also anti-bullying training that involves, because digital violence also involves bullying behavior, and anti-bullying training that could focus on teaching individuals on how to recognize and respond to bullying behavior. both online and offline. Mental health training to really talk about, you know, how to recognize the signs of mental distress that come from digital harassment, and media literacy training. I think one of the really important things here would be to develop a comprehensive approach. There's not going to be one single approach that is going to combat such a monstrosity, but we can all work together and tap into the different communities and different companies and legal resources and media resources to find a way out of this situation we're in right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Sana. Actually, this was a kind of good insight to see that what we can do. I think maybe this is not enough, like maybe to say, but I want to also ask in the second round that how the civil society or the other kind of companies or other kind of actors can be involved and let's say work for the awareness and education in a different way. But I found very good to see that how the comprehensive kind of approach is important in social life or the social surrounding of the victim or psychological well-being or well-being of the victim as well. And at the same time, even like her perception, I would say his, but mostly her perception about what is going on in digital kind of spaces. That's why it was very good to like have this comprehensive perspective. Thank you very much, Sana. Then we will have like the Turkish case, actually. That's why Onur Dinçer is with us today. He will be talking about examples from Turkey in the fight against digital violence and stalking. Actually, Onur is an expert on family and social services in Ministry of Family and Social Services in Turkey, and he is also General Director on the Status of Women. He studied sociology, and for the last 10 years he has been working as an expert like in this General Directorate of the Status of Women, and he's also working on the commissions for the agreed conclusions in the United Nations as well. Please go ahead, Onur, this is your time.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? I think I turned it on, but...
The closer is better.
Here? This way? Is it good? Okay, thank you. Yeah, maybe. Is it any better now? Oh, great. And please do not hesitate to warn me if I extend the spare time, okay? Oh, great. You already have your notes.
Just like more straight to your mouth. Yeah.
Other speakers did not have this problem. No, it's okay.
Your chance.
Yeah, I'm told, I know. Well, before beginning, I would like to thank Nurbanu and also the moderator for updating the audience regarding the devastating earthquake and also making the link between the natural disasters and the vulnerability of women and girls. Of course, I cannot stress enough how the earthquake hurted each and every Turkish citizen, but it also showed that somehow how everyone can connect together and create the necessary synergy in a huge-scale disaster. I think it gives us big hope for fast recovery, I must say. And I would also like to thank the other speakers before me. Their presentations was really very mind-opening for me. I learned a lot, I must say. Thank you very much. And as introduced, I've been working as an expert for 10 years at the General Directorate on the Status of Women. It's basically Turkey's national mechanisms for women's rights. And my duty is basically to follow the agendas of the women's rights of the United Nations, the Council of Europe, and other international organizations of which Turkey is a member. And I also contribute to those agendas on behalf of my country. Well, to be honest, I am neither a violence expert nor an online security expert, but as far as I observe from the international agendas, stalking has been on the table for some time now as an extension of violence against women, which is already existing a fundamental and a deep-rooted problem. I mean, just consider the priority theme of this year's CSW. It's innovation and technological change and education in the digital age for achieving gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls. Well, I think UN likes, long titles. Well, this topic is very important while the world gets digitalized day by day. Yes, I mean, we know that there are very good opportunities in new technologies for women and girls, but there are also there are also big threats of online violence and harassment, and also artificial intelligence systems are really problematic. I mean, these systems can perpetuate already existing inequalities if no one intervenes or take necessary measures. As Sana said, people were making fun of the connection between the AI systems and the human rights, but now everyone agrees that it's a really big problem, an ongoing problem, and a growing problem. So, I mean, in Council of Europe, as far as I know, there is really a big deal for many countries, especially Nordic countries, are creating some serious policy documents on the issue. Well, having said that, about CSW, again, I encourage everyone to take a look at the outcome document of this year, namely agreed conclusions. The negotiations of the document have started yesterday on this document, and actually that's the reason why I'm in New York. And the outcome document will be adopted next Friday, hopefully. It's being negotiated by all the member states. And it will include a pathway and also suggestions for member states and NGOs to overcome the new obstacles of the digital era, including, of course, the cyber violence issue. And in this sense, I would like to thank KADEM for organizing such an important event and giving us, the ministry, the opportunity to participate. Well, of course, it's not without reason that this issue is on the agenda globally. I mean, I think the main reason for this is that the new technologies make it much easier for perpetrators. I mean, as Adam mentioned, he gave a lot of shocking examples, and just one example from me. We now have more and more smart home appliances in our homes. Just in my house, we have a light bulb, a vacuum cleaner, an air purifier, a Bluetooth speaker, and a kettle. Yeah, it's a kettle. They're all smart, and you can connect them from everywhere. All you need is just a simple internet connection, which can be found everywhere in today's world. Well, while these devices make our lives significantly easier, they also make us easier to track. They make us really vulnerable in many situations. I know of a story where the perpetrator, suspicious of a smart bulb being switched on at night, harassed the victim. The perpetrator was the ex-husband, and the ex-husband had still access to the smart devices at home, and he kept asking, "What were you doing in the middle of the night, and who were with you?" I mean, it's really shocking. We have really shocking examples. So while these devices make our lives significantly easier, yes, they also make us very vulnerable. And as you can see, digital violence has been in our lives for some time, but its impact and scope of the action are now, we can say, much greater. It is now much easier to reach people, I mean, interact with them and follow their mobility and actions. But we have to say that the effects of cyber violence and stalking using communication technologies on the victim are as almost strong as the physical violence in most cases. So information and communication tools can also replicate and magnify violence in the offline world as well, leading to a continuum of recurring and interrelated forms of violence. And this is why we should take this emerging form seriously. Turkey is a member to the CEDAW Convention, the Convention on Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. This committee releases general recommendations for the state parties, and they had released a general recommendation on violence. Actually, it was the updated version of an old recommendation in 2017. And the committee recognized the online form of the violence as a genuine form of violence, which is something really important. And just like other forms of violence, stalking and online violence are really serious issues that violate women's rights to safety and privacy. So I have to say that I like the term digital human rights. I mean, it includes right to safety and a right to privacy and many other rights. So it's a really good term, I believe. And I think we can say that as a motto, digital human rights are human rights, actually, nothing different, I must say. And these forms of harassment can cause immense psychological and emotional distress, and they can have severe consequences for the victims, both in personal life and also, as mentioned, in professional life. It's important to note that online violence not only results in psychological, professional, and economic harm, but also deters women from participation in political, social, and cultural life, and it exacerbates the already existing inequalities. Well, as Sana mentioned, the online targeting of women and girls in the public eye, including politicians, journalists, and media workers, they are disproportionately impacted by violence, the harassment, and hate speech. And indeed, online violence against women in this regard poses a deepening challenge to democracy and serving as a key tool of democratic backsliding. It encompasses all forms of aggression, coercion, and intimidation seeking to exclude from social life, simply because they are women. I come out to a UNESCO study. This study of women journalists found that 11% of the respondents missed work to recover from violence, 38% made themselves less visible, 4% quit their jobs, and 2% abandoned journalism altogether. So it's a really serious issue, affecting also the professional lives. And one of the key challenges in dealing with this kind of harassment is that the perpetrator can stay within legal boundaries, and legislation in many national contexts is still unclear. I mean, even there is good legislation, personnel might not be trained well. So even now, many countries still could not take appropriate measures, I must say. And the government, of course, has a crucial role in addressing the problem. The government must develop and enforce laws that criminalize these offenses, as well as provide resources for victims to seek help and support. Also, education campaigns and provide training for law enforcement personnel. Also, to effectively investigate and prosecute cases of cyberstalking is very important. And when it comes to Turkey, Turkey is combating violence against women through zero tolerance and multifaceted efforts, projects, and campaigns for many years now. And I must say that we, in the last like 10, 15 years, Turkey had really gathered a nice, experience on combating the issue. And we provide services to women who are victims of violence and also women who are at risk. We strengthen national legislation, raise public awareness, and mobilize institutional mechanisms in coordination with all parties. This is important because you have to also include universities, NGOs, and everyone. So, as said, it's a really complex issue that everyone has to, do something about it. And when it comes to legal framework, Turkey has been a signatory to the Council of Europe Convention on Cybercrime, also known as Budapest Convention, since 2015. And furthermore, acts of cyber violence are prosecuted under various provisions of the Turkish Penal Code. And in the beginning, it was also mentioned that the stalking has been defined as a separate crime in the Turkish Penal Code last year. The perpetrator who causes concern about someone's safety by following them or trying to contact them via internet or other electronic means is sentenced to imprisonment of between 6 months and 2 years according to relevant law. So I have 2 minutes left. Maybe I can talk about the communication technologies should also be used effectively. I mean, as a result of our experiences in Turkey since 2012, we have expanded the electronic handcuff application throughout the country, where we monitor both victim and the perpetrators and provide faster and more effective support to the victims. And we have the Women's Support System application. It's a mobile application which victims of violence or women at risk of violence can use on their smartphones to receive an effective intervention. This mobile application was launched in cooperation with the Ministry of Interior and our ministry, and only women can download this application by using their national IDs. And as of February, almost 5 million people have downloaded this application, and like 635,000 people have reported violent acts through this application. Okay, I'm finishing now. Of course, we continue to provide institutional services. This is really important. We have violence prevention and monitoring centers. We have contact points for combating violence within social service centers, and we have a specialized hotline which we call Alo 183. It's 183 that you can receive immediate support if you are a victim of violence. And in a nutshell, I think Turkey is a very good example how to combat online violence. I couldn't, talk about every issue with it due to the time limits. I'm really sorry about that. Well, I hope I could provide an overview. And before closing, as Adam also mentioned, I have to say that other stakeholders, such as social media platforms, telecommunication companies, also have a really big responsibility to prevent and address stalking and cyber stalking. The social media platforms and companies can implement measures to prevent abusive behavior, such as blocking and reporting features. They are really important. And online gender-based violence is a serious and a growing problem, I think so to say. That it requires a global response, and to eliminate violence in the digital context, we must take a really comprehensive approach. So I believe that we can make the internet a safer and more inclusive place for women and girls if everyone works together. I would like to express my gratitude to moderator again. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Onur. I will give you some time to summarize your stuff, but I think we can just main discussion points here, but at the same time we will take some questions from the audience as well. Maybe they have also their own inquiries, actually. But I realized that I didn't introduce myself, by the way, at the beginning, because of very much my passion to jump into the topic, I guess. I am also one of the executive board member of KADEM and working mostly for the academic and international advisory kind of issues in KADEM. That's why for the last 2 years we are working very hardly on this violence-based discussion in legal, social, psychological and sociological levels. Because I am also a sociology professor at university and teaching gender and women study-based kind of courses, because this is my topic for the last 15 years. I am not an expert on violence and digital harassment as well, but at the same time, we are also having this very valuable kind of speakers to see that this is not about being a kind of expert on this violence, because we can also realize there are different conceptualization about it. I mean, cyber bullying, I mean, cyber violence, digital harassment, digital violence. There can be so many different kind of even conceptualization in every discipline and in every community. For example, for youth, you have to take different kind of tech, kind of application. And in maybe, let's say, some marginalized group, you have to take different kind of applications. For women and certain women, different kind of application. That's why I'm just very, very happy to have this productive discussion, but I want to have further kind of maybe issues. I will have some inquiries again, and then maybe we can talk about it. You were talking about vehicles at home, and Adam was talking about complex harassment and issues. That's why I want to also talk what is the digital versus social reality kind of discussion here? Because we are mostly thinking that digitalization is a bit in digital or nowhere else, and we are thinking that it's not in our life. Because it's a kind of a part vehicle or a part kind of thing, and then we are thinking this is not in our life. But as you said, we are maybe sleeping with our phones, actually. I am also doing it with my students most of the time. When you are with it, are you digital? Or are you real? I mean, what are you thinking? This is maybe why I'm asking this, because this is maybe a good thing to talk about awareness and education. And the second issue is a bit controversial maybe, because everything related to stalking and digitalization also related to Turkey mostly. For example, with freedom of speech and freedom of act, actually. And they were saying that if there is no like clear kind of, I don't know, bullying or clear kind of crime in quotation marks, it's always said, it's my freedom of speech, I can say anything to a journalist, to a politician, or to kind of woman. What do you think about these whole issues? Maybe you can just think about it and we can take some questions from you as well. Is there any question about this issue to Adam, Sana, and please?
First, thank you so much. My name is Teresa Gerke, the founder and CEO of Popsicle. Stands for Protecting Our Precious Curious Kids Online through cybersecurity awareness. And I have been stalked online and in person, so this is really interesting to me. But also, from a legal perspective, I have a lot of lawyers in my family. They don't do this kind of law. But can we create any international laws that can ban digital stalking? Would be one question. A statement would be, I have volunteered with Operation Safe Escape, which is an organization that helps women with domestic violence. But they also have their predators who are very tech savvy. So we have a cadre of people who, like me, work in cybersecurity or in tech, who help women fix their, repair their passwords, implement multi-factor authentication, lock down a lot of their social media and privacy and stuff like that. So there's lots of tips that we can also start sharing with young girls and women about how to protect themselves in the digital space.
Yeah, is this working? I'll just talk loudly. That's an amazing organization. Domestic violence survivors need all the resources they can get. But to your point, one of the things that is surprising but fairly common in these stalking cases involving intimate partners is that the hacking aspect is that these intimate partners simply have login access to various accounts. So, it's not that these are people who are doing brute force attacks. It's that the Netflix password is also the Gmail password. So these tips that you're talking about are absolutely crucial for the public to know and for the affected populations to know. In terms of whether an international law is possible, I would defer to people who are a bit better versed in international law, which is probably everyone else. But, in the United States, free speech concerns do play a factor in this. A smaller one because courts view stalking as conduct rather than speech, which is a kind of separate thing. But getting the US on board with the rest of the world on issues that kind of touch on speech and tech has been a big challenge so far.
Huge challenge. Definitely, just add to what Adam is saying, that we've been organizing congressional and Senate panels on holding Facebook accountable for its practices that have led to genocide in different parts of the world. And it's been an uphill battle all the way. And then we talk about how widespread and prevalent this violence is against women all the time, everywhere. And sort of first step I'm thinking is the types of laws that are the ones that are most likely to protect us, that we can have access to, are the ones within our communities, our local and city and state governments. So as Onur had mentioned, this reporting mechanism that they have in Turkey about how you can report digital crimes that are happening to you, I'm just thinking, brainstorming out loud, like, how do we adopt something like that here? How do we come up with some sort of process like that within our own, city and state sort of legislature, so we have some sort of protection? Because right now, we have very little protection. As we had been discussing, Adam, to even get the police to believe you is so difficult. And to get a restraining order, like, you have had to have lived with them or been in a relationship with them. And a lot of the times, as you know, that the stalking that is taking place, it's by an acquaintance. And so you can't even get a restraining order against these guys. So it's just, there's so many sort of roadblocks in trying to protect ourselves, but hopefully we can, you know, yeah.
Can I? Regarding the international law, as far as I know, there is not a binding document, international document yet, but there are some good documents and recommendations actually. As an example, Council of Europe with its 47 member states adopted a recommendation on sexism, eliminating sexism, like 3 years ago. And the document is really important because it's the first internationally agreed text that defines sexism. And it, of course, addresses online threats and also hate speech against women and girls. Yes, there is not a binding document yet, but the documents that like the documents I talked about, the recommendations can turn into binding documents one day, like they can be conventions or other binding resolutions. So I think in the next years, in the upcoming years, I think both United Nations and other international organizations will draft some, binding documents on the issue. That's something I expect.
I mean, as you are also in some discussions, you can just suggest into like one of the big suggestions, and yeah, thank you, Onur. I think we have time to have one or two questions. Is there any questions from your side? Yeah?
Which is, I think the legal process is where we're going to have the most traction because there are no consequences to people's actions, and if there are consequences, then people think twice about doing something. So why is libel not something that people can go for? Because, and the reason I'm saying that, because I'm a Muslim and I've studied Islamic law, and gossip, slander, libel, defamation are major crimes in Islam, punishable. But in traditional societies where we have courts, you could go to a court, have a couple of witnesses with you, somebody who threw a word at you, called you a whore or something, and you had a couple of witnesses, that could be punishable. And, libel was even more punishable because you put it in writing.
Right.
And that's what's happening right now. Everybody's putting this stuff in writing.
Everything.
It's all online, it's writing, and with a click of a button, you can share that information with hundreds and thousands of people, and you're defamed, slandered, gossip, all at once. So why don't we go for that?
Well,
because that would be so effective. And I'll give an example, because in 2010, I was very much in the news for continuously 6 months because I tried to build a community center in Manhattan, and then the Islamophobic regime came after me like the full steam ahead.
Right.
And then somehow they got into my Twitter account and said that I had said something which was borderline anti-Semitic. And so I could have been crucified by the remaining of the community because this community was on a major onslaught against me. And to label anybody an anti-Semite, especially a Muslim, goes a long way.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
So what I did was I took the advice that my crisis communications team gave me. Do not say anything about this issue. Do not repeat it. Do not even say that I am not an anti-Semite. Go for the source. Always go for the source of who is saying and show the credibility or the non-credibility of that source. So I brought, and make sure that that is not done by you, it's done by a trusted source, other people. So I brought my whole Jewish community on slot, went in there, and so that is what changed it, and you have to catch it really early. So my question to you is, libel it's so glaring to me, like why don't we create a law, a bunch of us who are concerned about this, and try to go strike at this one.
So First, let me say, I'm very sorry that you went through that. That is, being the target of a public onslaught is something no one should have to go through. I think your crisis team did give you good advice. And in terms of criminal libel, it's not really a United States trend because of the First Amendment concerns. Some states have it. As far as I know, it's pretty rarely used. As a tool, we sue for defamation fairly often, and we've done defamation defense because it can go both ways. During the aftermath of Me Too, we defended a series of lawsuits brought by alleged sexual predators against our clients who were the women who were accusing them of that. Overall, that was shockingly ineffective for those men. They spent a huge amount of money, by and large, on attorneys, and in many cases, they resolved with a settlement with either very little or not much, or no money paid. So what those people did is they had basically just ensured there was a permanent record of the claim in a more substantive way and let journalists write about it. So in terms of other laws that could be important, someone mentioned, that Sana mentioned, stalking right now in New York is limited to intimate partners, intimate family, blood. We need to open that up, right? Because the way the internet works, especially with a gendered crime, is that people are getting targeted by acquaintances, by people with a parasocial relationship with them. You know, just because you're an influencer or you're a reporter or you're a public figure, you're now fairly likely to have a random unwell person become obsessed with you. So you should be able to get to the courts. The police need to be pressured much more strongly to take it seriously. You know, as it is now in Manhattan, if you're being stalked, my understanding is that they will not charge you. They will not charge a stalker unless they have had a conversation with them. Meaning the DA will send someone to do a knock and talk and say, oh, please stop. And only if they don't stop will they even consider criminal charges. So it's a kind of far-reaching problem. Do I wish we had more federal attention to it? Yes. Have we managed to get it? Yes, but only in the most extreme and egregious circumstances.
Okay, thank you. Maybe I can give you 1 minute to for the last kind of comments, because we have 1 or 2 minutes. Because you were talking about certain kind of good examples from Turkey, I guess, and then maybe Adam and Sana can add and finalize their words. It can be about my previous questions or...
Thank you. Well, I think just by looking at Turkey, we can summarize what should or what can a government do in this regard. And first, I think we need to take legal measures, and that specifically addresses and recognizes the online violence as a genuine form of violence. And of course, it's not enough. You should also train the personnel working on the field. If they don't know what to do, the laws would not be implemented efficiently. And 3, the national grievance mechanisms should collaborate with the institutions that regulate digital technologies. So these institutions can make protocols if necessary. It's also important. The technology institutions might not have the know-how, so it's the mechanism's duty to provide the right view and mainstream the issue. And 4, conduct awareness-raising activities for whole society. It's something we already talked about. The online forms of violence might not be taken as a serious issue by the community, so governments should tell that online harassment is not a joke, and it will have legal consequences if you choose to make hate speech or harass someone in the digital world. And 5, we can use new technologies effectively to fight the violence committed by new technologies. As I said, we have women's support system application, and these mobile applications really can be helpful, and it can facilitate to report violent acts. And last but not least, even if you take all the measures, we know that unfortunately there will still be victims. It's because it's a very deep-rooted problem, and unfortunately we know that we cannot overcome this issue in a single night. So it is really crucial to protect the victim and empower the victim. And for this, of course, you need some strong institutional mechanisms, such as violence prevention centers, shelters, hotlines, just like we have in Turkey. And of course, you need well-trained personnel working in these mechanisms. I think that would be my summary on what can a government do.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Adam?
Do you have more?
I was just continuing to think about what we were talking about. You know, one of the controversial but potentially decisive questions over the next few years are going to be, is online anonymity curtailed, right? In a meaningful way. Will you have to be verified to use the big social media platforms? Will that solve everything? Probably not, because there will be still cyber criminals. You know, you were describing the person who broke into your Twitter account. Right, that's not going to solve that. But some of the toxicity, some of the ability to use burner accounts, disposable accounts that you're never going to log into, it could be an incremental improvement. Obviously, there's lots of trade-offs. I'm mindful that we're in on a panel about women's issues, and in many countries, women do not have the ability to speak freely, so their anonymity is absolutely important. But it will be a balancing test over the next few years, I think, as the internet reckons with. Social media has been pretty bad over the past decade. Yeah. I think almost everyone, agrees. It's been pretty net negative. So does it change and become something where verification is really needed? And at least then we know who's speaking, right? And they can be either, sued or calmed down or anything. And that's an open question. And I think that it may make a difference for women and girls.
Thank you, Edwin. Thank you.
Yeah, I was saying that any approach, as all the panelists have mentioned, must be comprehensive. And I was also wanting to mention that I think that it's important that we have service providers, such as social media platforms and telecommunications companies, also involved in the fight against this type of harassment and violence. Just as, there's new technology that will turn your cell phone off when you're driving, or prevent you from getting phone calls or text messages to sort of reduce the risk of texting and driving. Tech companies also can play a greater role in providing mechanisms to protect people's personal safety. When they're seeing constantly, especially one of the ways that a lot of the women that I've spoken to have been hacked, and it's scary how prevalent it has been through Google, has been through the Google accounts, which is basically absolutely everything. And so their voice recorders, everything. And so for tech companies to make sure that there are mechanisms to ensure that the people who are using their account, accessing the account, are the people that are the holders of that account, not stalkers. And so they need to also play a greater role and take that responsibility. I think it's something that we need to organize to make sure that they own up to.
Okay.
Yes.
I think we have to finish Sana.
We're good.
I mean, thank you very much, by the way. It's very good that we are going to home or anywhere else with so many questions and maybe application kind of suggestions and different kind of, new alternative ways to look at. Thank you very much, everyone, to be here today. And thank you very much to my panelists. It was a great, amazing, productive discussion. Thank you all.